Growing a business and being an entrepreneur can be very difficult and stressful. Speaking to your customers, dealing with their problems, managing the HR, the finance, and even the marketing strategy can become very overwhelming. In this episode, I speak to our guest, Cath Harrison, founder and director of Be Assisted, a virtual assistant agency that creates time for busy business owners and takes care of the tasks that they can't do, don't do, or that they probably shouldn't be doing. We discuss Cath's career to date with her stories of experiences working for huge corporations such as British Rail and Hewlett-Packard in various different roles. She explains the story of how she was able to turn a sad story of redundancy during the pandemic into a hugely positive one with the launch of her very own PA agency. All of that coming up. Welcome to the Visibility Agency Business and Marketing Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Visibility Agency Business and Marketing Podcast. Joining me today is Cath Harrison from Be Assisted.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for taking time out today to join me. At the top of the show, I'm obviously going to plug a little bit more about the podcast because we are episode 5 now. This is episode 5, and so go and check out YouTube for me and subscribe to the channel. That really helps. We're also available on Spotify too, so please give us a follow on there. Cath, thanks for taking the time out. Let's talk about you and your business. So please introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about what you do day to day and a little bit about your company.
Okay. So I'm Cath Harrison. I started my business, Be Assisted, as you can see behind me. It's a virtual assistant business. So my background is in PA, EA roles. I've worked within that profession for over 35 years. And just before COVID, I was made redundant, and I started this business really as a bit of a last resort to be able to pay the mortgage. So I provide business owners with personal and business support. So as well as like your usual PA support with the business, the organising meetings, inbox management, travel, expenses, the usual PA type role. I do quite a lot of personal admin as well. So supporting clients with their personal admin. So that's what I do. And I've been going about just over 3 years, about 3 years and a week, something like that.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting time during COVID, and I'm sorry to hear that that's what happened to you in your previous role. But clearly, this is giving you an opportunity now to be able to set up a business, and 3 years in, that's a good stint, right? So it's not a startup anymore. Maybe you're moving into more of a established business now. So.
This is it. And it was something obviously that I'd never done, didn't know. I kind of did it in my head just to kind of get through COVID as something that I could possibly do. But then coming out of COVID, I've got a full client, book. So I was literally working with a lot of clients, and I just thought, I'm just going to carry on because I actually love what I do. So, yeah.
Awesome. Great. Okay, so that's a nice introduction. We'll talk more about your company later and the challenges that you face.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your career journey in the earlier days, and kind of the kind of roles that you had to bring you to the point where you're now running your own business. Maybe you could take us through that journey a little bit.
No, that's fine. Okay, obviously. It's a long time. I left school when I was 15, back in the days when we had GCs and O-levels, and before GCSEs came in. Average at school, always wanted to work with children. I left school thinking I'll get an office job for a couple of years. Anyway, did that, got one of the old YTS schemes, worked on, on a YTS scheme, which was, if people don't know, it was almost like an apprenticeship for office work. So you went around different areas of an organisation, see where you like. Anyway, that was, when I was 15, 2 years later, finished that, I ended up staying with that company, which was actually British Rail Engineering Limited. I'm based in Derby. It was one of the main employers, along with Rolls-Royce in Derby at that time. So I stayed with them 8 years, and then I progressed from that because I did secretarial roles within the railway. I used to work for like a planning manager, your lower level kind of management. Then I actually left to go and work at somewhere again in Derby, just outside of Derby, in a place called Alfreton, and was a PA to a general manager. So I went and did that. He then left a couple of years later, but wanted me to move with him to carry on being his PA. So that's what I did. Went and worked in London for a year for him, commuting every Monday and Friday up and down. So I went and worked for him, but then I was getting married in 2000 and thought I should really perhaps come back and not just be away all week. So I got married 2000. I got a new job then at Hewlett-Packard. We were working on the Rolls-Royce account in Derby. And that was me then. I was there that was the PA to the client executive on the Rolls-Royce account for HP. And it was, 17 years I was there, with a couple of little 3 or 4 month breaks to have 2 children, which, we never had. We never had a year off in those days. It was a few months, then back into it.
That's quick, yeah.
So with that, I've got 2 sons now. So one's 21 and one's 18. And so 17 years I was with HP. They were then, I worked with them in various different roles within the organisation. Different people came and went. You kind of moved around the organisation. 17 years later, then they were getting taken over by DXC Technology, and there was a massive restructure. 10 of those years, the latter 10, I worked from home for HP. DXC Technology came in and said they wanted everybody back in offices, but they were doing away with the Derby office. They basically said, you've got a job still, but it's either in Erskine in Glasgow or Newcastle, and wasn't going to happen. Yeah. Well, I've got 2 boys. The boys were both at school, and it just wasn't feasible. I was also going through divorce at that time as well, and I thought, well, I'll get a decent redundancy payoff, so it will help me with going through that and getting my own house and things like that. So I actually took a redundancy and had a couple of jobs locally, but one of them was I worked for the PA for the CEO of Euro Car Parks at Tamworth, but it was a bit of a nightmare because it was longer days, but also it was a good at least hour's journey if there was no traffic. So that's one of those things that it seemed okay on paper, but
at that point you'd been working at home for 10 years, as you said, right?
Yes.
So to then change that,
for the commute, and also working long days and having 2 boys that I was leaving in the morning to get up and go to school and hoping that they'd get up and go to school, and coming home and they'd been home from school about 3 hours and hungry.
Place is trashed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was it. It was like, I need something a bit closer to home. So I started working. I looked for jobs, and I worked up at near Denby. I don't know whether you know, near
world famous Denby Pottery.
Near Denby Pottery. It was just down the road from Denby Pottery. A company called Deb. They made industrial skincare and hand care. Okay. You often see them in any, So I was the PA to the marketing director and the HR manager there. And and then I worked there, and then they got taken over in the February. Well, they actually got taken over the previous year when COVID was just on the horizon, and we were just hearing, about you were only affected if you'd been to China, So, but they got taken over by SC Johnson, and they basically started making redundancies because they had a massive restructure. Then the February, I was made redundant. So I'd obviously one of the newest starters, so I was made redundant. Ordinarily, I'd just go straight back into another job. Look what's about. Yeah. But of course, we'd got COVID, and we'd got the fact that a lot of companies had already sent people home to work. A lot of companies were starting to kind of furlough staff. And then we had the directive off Boris that everybody needs to work from home. Nobody should go to work. And we had the lockdown. And I was like, I haven't got a job. I don't know what to do. And I was really, it was, obviously I was now on my own. So I was the sole breadwinner and needed to get some money I'd never been out of work my whole life, So I just thought, somebody said to me, well, why don't you set up on your own? And I'm like, well, I don't know what to do or where to start. And, so it was a really big learning curve. I kind of went first and, I set myself up with a limited company. I kind of did a bit of research and thought maybe that's the best thing, the pros and cons of going down both. But I kind of went down that route. And, things like setting up a website, made inquiries. Thousands people wanted, so I set my own up, which I've still got to this day, my own. And people do actually say it's okay,
I said that to you. That to you. I like your branding, and then I can see at the bottom that it was. I think with GoDaddy. And,
it's GoDaddy, and I did it all myself.
And that shows that branding and messaging is important. It's
the
not
branding
necessarily.
And messaging. I always wanted to go down the bee route. I do think bees are, they're a worker.
Hardworking.
They work, they always work. We can't live without them, that kind of thing. And I literally got a friend of my boyfriend at the time. His friend is a graphic designer, and he made me my little logo, the little bee on the cup that's behind me. He did that for me. Based on the fact I wanted, just on what I'd kind of said. And I was really pleased with the whole thing. And he did that as a favour. So that was really nice. And kind of it was just to kind of learn as I go. And, one of the things I've got to learn, I knew a lot about working remotely because, as I said, I've worked for 10 years for HP remotely, but we're in a different world now. We'd got to do everything remotely, and we'd got Zoom that suddenly had come in over COVID. I used to work, like I say, for HP, and we had Skype, but we rarely used the camera. It was rarely a video call. It was just teleconferencing. So it was a whole new world, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting that you probably have seen the comparison between how it was when you worked at home for 10 years and how everybody thinks it's this new thing of working from home during COVID, right? And post-COVID. But for you, that was kind of normal, although, you know, like you say, technologies and systems maybe were improved.
Technology has been brilliant, that there's so many apps for things. There's a lot of, collaboration tools, you can still be a team. There's things like Slack is really good. I've worked with a few clients who have that, and corporate clients who will have Slack. It's good. It's a good collaboration kind of tool. And obviously, we've got Teams, Microsoft Teams. That's the whole, it's to kind of keep people together when they are remote. There's been a lot of learning of new technology, and different clients will use different tools, different apps,
different systems. So that's a question I've got then. So I mean, in terms of how do you deal with that then? Because you've obviously got your system and you want to try to keep as organized and productive as you can, but then when you've got clients, I'm throwing you a curveball here. When clients come to you and they've got their own systems, how do you deal with that? Because obviously you have probably your system. Do you adapt to that? Do you have do you meet them halfway? How does that work?
No, I'll always work. Okay, so when I start with a client, the first thing will be a discovery call, and I will ask these questions. What system do you use? Do you use Outlook or do you use Google, G Suite for emails and scheduling. You see, I'm a big Microsoft fan. I'm a big Microsoft geek. I've obviously been brought up in the corporate world. It was Microsoft all the way. Google's relatively new compared to Microsoft. I know that Google can do amazing things, but you know how it's, maybe I'm just old. It's like what you're used to. You know what I mean? I know where I'm going with
Sure.
Microsoft. And life's just easier for me with Microsoft. I do have clients that use Google and Gmail. It irritates me the way some of the emails are filed, and you have to put them in labels or rather than folders, and just these little things that.
Sure.
But I work with whatever the client's got, and also if the client perhaps, I might recommend things for the client. Maybe they are doing something, and I actually think, you know what, it would be easier.
Yeah.
If you use this tool for that.
Absolutely. And this is where your experience comes in to keep things organized and business owners, I'm, for example, I'm the managing director of our business, and I have many, many things going on all the time, spinning so many plates. And so if, somebody like you, Cath, can come in and support with, okay, we'll try doing it like this, then you can save a bit more time here and there. And then that helps everything run smoothly. So it's good that you can make those suggestions.
Exactly. And some people are reluctant to I can't, I've got that system, I can't be doing with using that one as well. Too many plates to be juggling. But things like Trello are really good for a lot of people. It keeps everything, you've literally got a list for everything. It keeps everything very clear. It's almost like a to-do list, but and then some people just prefer to write a to-do list down. It's just horses for courses. People work differently, but if I can see a way that somebody can actually, I know that there's a way that you can save time doing that, I'll suggest it. Whether they take that on board is entirely up to them, but that's why I'm here, to try and make their lives a little bit more, give them a bit more time back. So if I can see something that will save them some time, I'll certainly suggest it. Whether they go with it, that's
that's not on you. That's not on you. It's difficult sometimes to change, but if you see the benefits of it and test it, then people are more willing to change. So in terms of like things about you, the job that you do, then what would you say that is the most unique and interesting part of your role working with business owners? Is it mainly business owners you work with?
It's mainly business owners I work with. I have worked, because I do personal admin as well, I have worked with business owners, but nothing to do with the business. So they may be a business owner, but they want me to help with their personal admin. I had a client who they were both I think a husband worked in the stock exchange and she was a business owner, but she was off on maternity leave. She just had twins. And I was doing more of the personal things. I was organising travel, organising nannies, private jets. I had to organise private jets because it was during COVID. And I think if they did the private jet route, they didn't have all the nightmares with all the issues surrounding, the testings and stuff like that. I think it was just a lot more straightforward and not as much time involved. And then at the other end, I've got people who are perhaps business owners, and I touch on a bit of the business admin. But a lot of the stuff, again, is organising their own personal appointments, booking the car in for a service. I had one client who took me on board to help sort out an issue they've got with EDF Energy, and I managed to don't know whether you've seen my LinkedIn post, George, about this, but I've managed to get £2,000 refund for them from EDF. They'd been going backwards and forwards with them for absolutely months and had basically lost the will to live. Just kept
you
going
need to change your job title then.
And so and they were so pleased, and it's like you have kind of tenfold increased what we've paid you to do these things, your monthly kind of bill we've just got back. And
That's
it's
awesome.
just little things like that, and just kind of knowing these routines, and going down. I took it up with the ombudsman for them, basically. So that's
okay. I mean,
one of those things.
with a business owner, for example, they're very busy with lots of different things that they feel that their time is valuable in this particular area. And if they have any doubt potentially that, they might not get that money back with EDF, for example, and they feel like it might be a waste of time, or they feel like if they spend that time on that and it doesn't work, then the lost opportunity, right? So if you can come in and support, I mean, obviously, maybe you're not advertising your services as purely like claiming back rebates, but
claiming back rebates off the energy companies. Yeah, I'll be hating to think goodbye for the energy companies. No,
but,
it's just these things that a lot of things can take a lot of time. Even the most straightforward things like changing something on your car insurance can take a while. They tell you to do everything online, and then you go online and say this bit needs to be done over the phone, and you need to phone us, and then you'll phone them, and you go around 5 people and have to explain the same thing to each one.
Yeah.
With any of this stuff, because of GDPR and data protection, it often means that they have to send an email to them to allow me to do the on their behalf, because I'm not them. Obviously, as a VA, I have to be ICO compliant. So, I work within GDPR. So it's something I'm very aware of, as all VAs should be, and insured. So it's one of those things that, having an awareness about things like that as well helps clients when they're wanting to send out mailing lists, and they'll say, I want to send this, and I kind of bring in that, well, are you sure that, you're allowed to, where have the email addresses come from? And, it's kind of that. And some people, because it's not within their realms of what they would normally do, probably aren't quite aware of the things that they could actually fall foul of with the law in that space. So somebody like me who's aware of that, because we have to be ICO compliant. And your original question, which I've probably gone away from, the most exciting thing is I love the variety. I can be doing your normal VA stuff, but then I'm organising, like you said, private jets. I'm organising away days for companies. But I'm trying to find, doggy daycare for somebody. Every day brings interesting new things. Tuesday, this week, I was feeling one of my big clients as unfortunately, I think, they're going through a lot of a cash flow crisis, and they might have to reduce my hours. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I was speaking to somebody on LinkedIn, and they said, I'll just put something on my LinkedIn about, if you need a VA. And they did that. Anyway, I had 5 calls yesterday.
Wow.
Got 3 calls set up. And then I had 2 calls come through Facebook, and 1 phone call yesterday off somebody who'd just seen my site on Facebook. Everything. And awesome. Like all within a day.
What a roller coaster.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster. And it really is. And I just think that's a lot of the things with VAs as well. A lot of them give up. It's the whole getting clients thing. But you can't give up. You just have to keep, it is all about, just the know, like, and trust factor, a lot of it, especially with what we do.
Absolutely. Yeah. I say it's a roller coaster, and I say that from personal experience. And I feel you, and I know, and just perseverance and positivity gets everyone along the way, I think.
I'm a very positive person. It's one of these things I always think, I don't worry about anything, but maybe I should. But then I think, well, no, because I worry about it when it actually happens. Worrying about something that might not happen, why worry?
Absolutely. You can control what you can control, and unfortunately, you have to leave the rest of it up to whatever we all believe in. Okay. In terms of, let's move on now to the biggest challenge that you faced in your career, or maybe the biggest, career, or in your business, or the one thing that it sticks out to you that you've had to overcome in the biggest dip in your roller coaster that's up and down, like every business owner. Which is the biggest, if you had to pick one?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about career, it would have to be when COVID came and I hadn't got a job, and it was like I really didn't know what to do. I can honestly say, had we not had COVID, I would never, ever in a million years have set my own business up. It is, you know what I mean? It was one of the perhaps good things that came out of COVID. I know there's not many good things that came out of it, but to me, I know for a fact I would not have had the confidence to have done it if it was an option between that and getting another job. I'll get another job. I'll get a pay packet in my in my bank at the end of every month without me having to go out and find all the work. You know, it's an easier kind of option. But just to go out of your comfort zone a bit sometimes. I've learned this so much in the past 3 years because everything is out of my comfort zone. I've never had to sell my own me before when I'm working in a corporate role. I probably went in LinkedIn about 4 times before when I was working for companies. And now I'm in there almost, you know, I don't know how many hours a day. Yeah, I'm in there a lot because, you know, I think it's a great platform for, you know, for kind of getting yourself visible on. And so I think really the whole, if you said about my career, the biggest challenge would be that kind of becoming a business owner. I mean, I wasn't young. When I started it, I was 49. So I was quite old, you know, to kind of go down that route to start my own business. So it is one of those things that took a lot of kind of, you know, just courage, confidence, self-esteem, really, because, you know, thinking, I'm not going to be able to do this. How do I do this? And how do I do that? And
but this is it, you know, you've solved problems for everyone else for many years, and now you're solving those problems for yourself as well as still helping others. But you know, you've got the experience behind you, and yeah, you know, it's good that COVID, like you said, there was not many good things that came out of it, but this allowed you to then move forward and go on your own, and that's a really, really good thing. And it's amazing that you've taken that leap, really.
Yeah, there was a lot of people, you know, when I got on LinkedIn, I was kind of, I know, you know, inspired by and kind of tried to get a lot of, I got a lot of knowledge about a VA, what we do, and things like that off, you know, people on there. Catherine Gladwin was one of them, and I still think Catherine's brilliant with what she does. I got her book, you know, How to Be a Virtual Assistant, no less. It was called, and I always say to it, even now, it is my Bible, you know what I mean? And it's one of those things that, you know, it's actually really good that there's a lot of people out there to give advice, and that's something I've tried to do. Now I'm 3 years in, and you see these newbies kind of coming in. I like to go on like Facebook groups where you see people who've just kind of jumped into the world of being a VA, and they've got all the questions that I had, you know.
Yeah, so and that leads nicely onto that's a nice segue, amazingly, into what advice would you give, to new people coming in to the industry, and is there anything you would have done earlier? Maybe you would have said that you'd have done it earlier, but you know,
a bit like my divorce. I should have done it years ago. No, I should have done it years ago. It's one of those things that you just, I would never have thought I'd have had the confidence to kind of do. But now looking back, I do wish I'd have done it a long time before. You know, it gives you a lot of freedom. You don't have to ask the boss for a day's holiday. I am the boss. I decide if I want to have a day's holiday. You know, it's popular with a lot of ladies who've got younger children because you've got that flexibility. You know, ladies who want to do school. My boys are older, but it would have been great when they were younger. You know, I mean, as luck would have it, I was working from home for HP when my boys were little. So I did have that. I could go and do the school run. But I just worked later. Do you know what I mean? But it is one of those things with regard to the advice. I mean, you know, get as much knowledge as you can before you make the kind of jump. There's so much out there. There really is so much out there. You know, even TikTok's full of stuff about virtual assistants. You know, it's not sort of a platform I tend to use much, but, you know, LinkedIn's great. there's lots of information out there. You Google it. There's lots of coaches and stuff. One thing I would say, and this is just with my knowledge now and looking at what happens around you, I do think that there can be a lot of people trying to make a lot of money out of people who are new to the business, but you can do so much of it. I never paid a penny for, any of the stuff that I kind of learned. I did it all myself. There's YouTube, there's a lot of different platforms. There's a lot of people doing free kind of webinars about stuff. It doesn't have to be a massive expense. You don't have to pay somebody, thousands to learn how to do it. If I can do it at my age, okay, I've got the background of knowing what the job is.
Absolutely,
so with regard to knowing how to do the job, that's absolutely fine. The business bit was my issue of running a business, having to do your accounts and, I'm a limited company, so I have to submit my accounts. I've now got an accountant that does that because that's not my forte at all.
Sure.
So that
but there's lots of tasks that you don't see when you're in a role that you have to do as a business owner, right? So
exactly,
all of these things,
marketing, sales, all that kind of stuff. I'm terrible at marketing. I go to, even now I
you're
go
not.
to networking events.
I've seen your website. You're not.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
This is marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, this is it. I'm just trying to get all these hints and tips as I go along. And it's every day's a school day, as they say.
Nice. And you mentioned earlier when we were speaking before we started about AI. Maybe you want to touch a little bit about AI.
Yeah.
Do you think ChatGPT is going to replace you, Cath?
Yeah. You see all these things. Virtual assistants are no more. ChatGPT is coming to take out all you virtual assistants.
Yeah. And marketing people.
And
we're all gone. We're all doomed.
You're all doomed. Yeah. This computer that you ask a question and it tells you an answer is going to take, all that away, and we're all going to be out of a job. Is absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
Take it from me. No, it is. I mean, okay, it's brilliant what it can do, but it can't. We all need the personal touch on things,
Yeah.
That ChatGPT couldn't have got that client that refund on there. They've not going to sit on the phone all day.
They wouldn't have had the patience.
They wouldn't have had the patience. No. And as well, and as I say often with my job, IT and tech is wonderful until it all goes wrong, and then we're back to the human aspect. And so without that human aspect, I don't think anything's any good. So
sure.
So yeah, I think it's good for what it does, but it's not going to take our jobs away.
Sure. Yeah, I totally agree. There's always going to be a need for someone to speak to a real person who's going to empathize with them and sympathize with them on that deeper level. And there's obviously tools that you can suggest to make things easier. But I totally agree. And it's the same in the marketing industry as well. Absolutely. So before we finish, is there anything else you want to talk about before you potentially could give your contact details of how people could get in touch with you? Was there anything else? Have we missed anything? PA Awards.
Oh, the PA Awards.
Yes, you're up for some awards.
I am. I'm up for some awards. I'm up for a couple of awards actually in June. I'm in the finals it's the Independent VA of the Year, and this is for the PA Forum West Midlands. I'm in, and it's I'm also in for the Lifetime Achievement Award, which would be lovely because that's a bit more personal to me than my business. It's more basically my lifetime in the profession of doing what I do and being a PA and, always kind of supporting it. And I think it's absolutely brilliant that these kind of awards are now out there and in place, because it actually makes people realise that behind every successful company, there is somebody like me or has been like me in the past who's helping that senior guy along in the background. And I think it just puts us in the foreground a bit and gives us a bit of kind of, a bit more acknowledgement. Yeah. And I think it's really lovely. And
awesome.
So I'm involved in that. And I was also in a magazine article about 2 weeks ago about my business. So that was lovely as well. So It's just,
Nice.
really good to kind of get the message out there about what I do and how good a profession it is to be in.
Nice. Yeah. Well, if you send me that link, we can add that to the show notes. That's not a problem.
Great.
So people can visit that article. So, how can people get in touch with you, Cath, if they want to contact you? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if anybody wants to contact me, I'm on LinkedIn. I think I don't know whether you'll put my contact details on there, but I'm in as Cath Harrison on all the social, Facebook and LinkedIn. My email address is cath@b-assisted.com. If anybody wants to drop me an email, I'm more than happy to have a chat with people, and you can approach me, through the messaging channels. I'm on Twitter as well. So
Nice.
just not on Instagram because they closed my account. So
Oh dear.
Oh,
Okay,
no,
but everywhere
I know.
else.
Yeah,
And your
well,
website is.
I got hacked actually. Somebody hacked it.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Oh no.
but I never really got much off Instagram just because I've got a corporate background, because of what I do.
Yeah.
LinkedIn is where it's at for me. So I've never
Absolutely. And your website as well is b-assisted.com, right?
It is. It's on the cup behind me. Yeah, it's
yes.
be-assisted.com. So
Awesome. Cath, thank you very much for taking time out today to speak to me. And it's lovely to hear your story. Please get in touch with Cath if you need any support. And thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.